Welcome to Whippoorwill Holler. I'm Miss Lori and this is Mr. Brown. We live in the hills of Arkansas. We love the Lord. Keepers of the old way, but accept some of the new. We love to cook and we love to eat. We love to garden. It's in our blood. It's how we stay sustainable and fill our pantry. We do a lot of canning and preserving. We live a sustainable life. We love our family. We work hard. And every once in a while, we like to dance. So y'all join us. So since we're going to be rendering lard, I thought we'd just talk about it a little bit. I've got an older video way back there. I had made some fried pies and fried them up in rendered fresh lard. And I think it's kind of hard for people to find that video because back then I was new at all this stuff. And I guess I didn't title it right. I need to go back and probably retitle it. But I had made fried pies, but also in that video I showed how we render lard. So I've been having a lot of people still asking me about rendering the lard, and I'm going to show you a really easy, modern way to render that lard from your processed hog that maybe you fed and took it to the butcher yourself. Maybe you raised it yourself, or that you may have purchased one from another farmer and had it butchered. And what you do is you make sure that you tell your processor, your butcher, that you want the fat from that hog. Because if you don't tell them, they'll throw it away. And if you don't have a hog to be butchered, but you would love to have some fresh lard, go to one of your meat processors or butcher or whatever and just ask them for some good pork fat, and just tell them you'd like to have some to render down for your own fresh lard. I'm going to talk about the benefits of lard, and I even done that in a video too a long time ago, the uses for lard. And then I'm going to show you how to render lard, and then I'm even going to show you how to make a good pie crust using good old-fashioned fresh lard. Because lard is actually an excellent fat for cooking and baking with, it is mostly saturated fatty acids. But it also contains a good portion of monounsaturated fatty acids, just like olive oil, both of which are very good for our bodies, for making hormones, for brain health, and for just our overall health. It is also one of the best sources of fully formed true vitamin D in a form that our bodies can use quite easily for building a strong immune system. Now, this is not, when I read this stuff, it's because I researched it, and go online or however you research and find it yourself. But I don't just go by one. I go and research and read up on several different places that I've researched from to make sure that it's all saying the same thing. But always go and do your own research for sure. Because of this, because it is a heavily saturated fat, it has a very high smoke point, and so it is very good for sauteing and occasional frying. It is actually better than a lot of other fats like butter and olive oil because you can heat it higher before it begins to burn, which is all that a smoke point really means. Lard is also great for pastries, pie crust, and any that calls for butter or Crisco food shortening. And a lot of people will tell you, do not use store-bought, man-made shortening, Crisco, whatever brand you're using. It is a synthetic, like I said, man-made shortening, but I can tell you there's many years that I use shortening because I used it in cookies and pie crust and everything else when I didn't have lard. When I've got lard, when I am blessed enough to have that lard, yes, I do use it. I hardly ever use shortening. There's only just a few instances that I might use shortening that a recipe called for, and I'm thinking that's because probably during the holidays or something, there's a few recipes that I would use shortening for. Lard helps make any pastry or pie crust nice and flaky. Use half butter and half lard to get that wonderful combination of flakiness and the buttery flavor. So lard is actually a great fat to keep in your pantry and use in your daily cooking and baking. Now we're going to talk about there's important things to remember when purchasing lard or rendering pork fat to make your own, is that it must be sourced from pigs that have been raised naturally on pasture. Never from a farm that uses conventional feeds, which are full of hormones and pesticides. These animals are loaded with toxins from their food and environment. The reason for this is because the toxins from the diets of conventionally raised animals are harbored on the fat. Sourcing the best quality fats will ensure the fat remaining clean, free from toxins, and safe for cooking. So because we raised our own hogs, we know that this lard is very free from any of these toxins or anything. We know what we fed. Our hogs were pasture raised, and if you're not able to raise your own, there are so many farms out there. You just have to look for them. You just have to go online and look for them, or just ask people around you. And go out and visit that farm. Whether if you're buying beef or pork, it doesn't matter, or chickens. Go out and visit that farm. And there's so many family farms out there. They're not a huge industry. Putting all that meat out with all that mess in it and selling it to all the stores. This is family-owned meat that they feed their own families, and they raise them very well enough that you can trust it a lot more than a lot of store-bought meat. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm against store-bought meat. There's been times that in my lifetime that I had to buy store-bought meat, and that was just the way it was to keep my family fed. And it was just always such a blessing if we were able to get a beef or a hog or whatever raised and get it butchered. And that's been most of our life, but there's just been times that didn't happen, and I had to buy store-bought meat. And it's just what you have to do to keep your family fed. That's all I can say about that. You do what you have to do to feed your family. Let's see, where did I leave off? Okay, you may notice that sometimes lard is called leaf lard, and you'll see that on some of the boxes maybe of lard that you can buy in the stores. It'll say leaf lard, which just means that fat comes from the most prized part of the pig, the fat around the kidney organs, and that is the truth. You'll see how good all the lard looks once I render it up. But that fat that's around the kidney organs in there, they say is the most pristine, the most, what you might call virgin lard. It's just the best of the best. Now, all of it's good, but this is just like the best of the crop. So that will be your most, like I said, perfect lard that you'll render. but all of it that you render will be good. Leaf lard typically has a milder flavor and especially good for baking. The fat for regular lard typically comes from the belly or shoulder of pigs. Both regular lard and leaf lard are wonderful fat sources. You have probably also heard of tallow, which is the same type of fat that comes from a cow, rendered in this same process. A good clean tallow is also great to cook with. But our favorite use for tallow is in skincare. High quality tallow makes wonderful balms, soaps, and creams. And that, I'll probably do a video on that because I do have some fresh tallow because we've had over the years, processed, took some beef to the processor, and we've bought fresh beef from our local farms around here because we don't raise cattle anymore, and it's farms that we know how they raise and what they feed their cattle. So we do have the tallow from that, and I'll probably do a video on that too and show you how I use it. If you're not quite ready to try your hand at rendering your own lard, but want to add it to your pantry, we recommend the Fatworks brand and the Epic brand, as they both source from local farms that raise their animals on regenerative pasture and are crafted for people seeking a clean fat to cook and bake with. It says the Epic brand even has duck fat, and I'm telling you, if you can ever get a hold of any duck fat and you cook with that, there's nothing that tastes any better. I'll try to find the links to this. If it's not down in my description box below the video and my information box, it's because I couldn't find it. But it's called Fatworks. That's a brand, Fatworks brand, and then Epic, EPIC. They're saying that's the best brand to look for. Some regenerative farms that we love and recommend purchasing pork fat from are Polyface Farm, or Triple E Farms, or Reverence Farms. Keep an eye on our research page. Okay, so what I'll do is I will look for y'all and try to find all the information on these different farms and try to help you out a little bit. So maybe you can find y'all some good fresh lard, and it'll be good for me to know too, because there's going to be times we use our lard very, very quickly. And of course we had 2 hogs processed. The other hogs we sold to other farms, but we had 2 processed, and we did get some fat on them from them, and we're in the process of getting that rendered. So but we'll use it up, and then there's going to be some time in there that we don't have any fresh lard, and it's very complicated for me because I don't buy the lard from our local stores, but I will be looking into this, so I will try to get that information. And if y'all don't want to listen to all this and you're just ready to go watch me render that lard, just go ahead and skip through this and watch me render that lard, because it is a simple, really wonderful way to do it. I used a slow cooker. I have done it in a big roaster before because I had so much, and that's the all-day process that I had to stick around. Of course, used to, they done it outside, and they done it in a big kettle, and but what I have found through the past years is if you're rendering that lard, and you don't have to cook it, that's the thing, you're just rendering that lard out of that fat is what you're doing. So you don't really want to scorch it, to burn it to death, to bring it up to such a high temperature that it changes the taste of that lard. So to me, being able to do it in my slow cooker on low, and I'm in and out, and I can go and check on it, and when I see that, you know, I've got enough rendered, I can, you know, dip it out and put it in my jars, put the lid back on it, and just let it keep rendering through the day while I just go on with all my business and just keep coming back to it. And it's almost like it's just too easy, you know. And it puts out a really good quality of fresh lard because you're not heating it up over that certain temperature that you don't need to, which will change the taste of your lard. So let's go on and let's render us some lard. Now, we're not going to be rendering all of it at once this time. I think Danny said he thinks that it might weigh maybe a little over 5 pounds in this package. They did grind it up for me, but it is still frozen. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it in my slow cooker, and I'm going to start rendering it. I'm going to put it on low, and I'll go back through the day, and I'll take the lid off, and if there's enough to dip out, I'll dip it out, and I'll just continue with that process all day. So I'll show you how I done that, and it's just, like I said, it's almost too easy to get such wonderful jars of what, you know, we all call our bacon fat, our liquid gold. We render it out of our bacon, and we put it in a container, and some of us keep it on the stove, some put it in the refrigerator if you don't use it very fast, and it's just like that special thing that you've got in that jar, and that's what this lard is. So you just have to know that that's what you're doing. Just like when you're cooking bacon and all that fat is rendering out of that, or that lard is rendering out of that little piece of fat, and you'll look in your skillet and there's just a little thing of good old bacon grease in there. Well, that's what we do. We keep that rendered lard, so you can imagine everything that we bake with it, we fry with it, we cook with it. It's a good thing. This is just one package of the fat that we got off our processed hogs that we took to the butcher, to the processor. This probably weighs about 5 pounds. I'd say about 5 pounds, maybe a little more, but not much. It's still kind of solid and frozen in the middle because it's been in the freezer. And I managed to get that thing in here, but I'm going to have to put foil over it till it kind of renders down and it'll fall down in that slow cooker. So I'm going to put foil on it for just a little bit. I've got it on low for about 7.5 hours. And I'll be checking on it as it renders down. Okay, you can tell that it rendered down a little bit, and it's worked its way down into my slow cooker. And it's probably been on for about 30 minutes, and you can see there at the side, you see that liquid down in there. That is the lard. That is the lard already rendered from that fat. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start taking it out. This is the way I'll keep doing it, because the less that you keep it on the heat, the more pure and better tasting your lard will be. So in my jar, I've got a little mesh strainer that I've got just over my funnel to catch those little bitty fat particles, little bitty fat pieces. And those little pieces that you see will be the pieces that they call cracklings. So once I would get all of my rendered lard and get all that out of there, that's when you'd have them pieces of fat left over, and that's when you would turn your heat up, and you would cook them, that fat. You'd cook it on a high temp and get them cracklings good and crunchy. Now I've got cracklings still in the freezer, so I'm really not wanting any more. So I won't be making no cracklings out of this fat. But I've got a lot more fat to render down than just this. I just like doing a little bit at a time because that's pretty much all the time I've got right now during the week. But you see right there is your pure D rendered lard. Now this has been rendering down for, oh, it's been about an hour, a little over an hour. And that is your pure fat. And I've gotten quite a bit of rendered lard already jarred up. And it's still rendering down, so I've still got quite a bit to jar up. And you can see this is what I've gotten so far. That is some of the prettiest lard. And it'll get solid here in just a little bit. So this is what I got out of that 5-pound bulk of fat. I got 2 quarts and a pint, and I'm going to say that this is a quart jar, and I'll finish this. When I go to rendering the rest of my lard, I will fill the rest of this up. This was probably getting close to another pint, and that is what I got out of all that. And you can see how pretty and white that lard is. I really do like doing it in the slow cooker. I just think I get a better product out of it. It did set up. You can see that it's set up. It's firm, but it's still soft, kind of like shortening. So that's how easy it is, and you get you a beautiful product just like that for baking with, deep frying, just cooking in general, baking, whatever. Turned out really well. So now that we've rendered our lard, let's make us a pie crust. An old-fashioned pie crust made with good old fresh rendered lard. And it's just your simple few ingredients, just like if you were going to make it with butter or shortening, canned shortening. Now you can also do this half butter and half lard. And like I read before, that way you get a flaky but really rich, buttery pie crust. But I like it with just plain old lard. So we've got 1.5 cups of just all-purpose flour. And when I store my rendered lard, I always put it in the refrigerator. That's just the way that we store it. Once we get it jarred up, we put the lid on it and we put it, I clean off a bottom shelf, and it's just used mainly to keep all the jars of rendered lard in there. If you can it, if you pressure can it, you can keep it in your pantry on the shelf and it'll stay good for several years. So I've got my 1.5 cups of sifted all-purpose flour. I'm going to put about a teaspoon, 3/4 to a teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to stir that up a little bit. Now since I keep my lard in the refrigerator, it's already cold. And I do like using cold lard making my pie crust just like I would if I was using shortening or butter. Do you have to? No. My grandma's lard was always kept in a big can in the corner of the kitchen, and so it was never cold for any reason, whether she made pie crust or whatever she made with it. But I do know that She made a lot of biscuits, and she fried stuff in that lard, so she cooked with it all the time. That's all she used. Let's see. So we got all that. Now we just need a half a cup of fresh lard. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. It's set up so good. Just a little bit more, and that should be half a cup. Now this lard's not been put in the refrigerator yet, so it's not cold. But it's fixing to go in there with all the other. And we still have quite a bit of lard to render. But like I said earlier, I like any more with our busy life and using the slow cooker. I just like to do a little bit at a time and get it put up and not get so overwhelmed with it. So with our cup and a half of flour and our teaspoon of salt and our half a cup of fresh rendered lard, I'm just going to use my hands and I'm just going to work this lard into my flour. Now most pie crust recipes, it's usually however much flour you use, it's half of that amount of lard. So you can see how I'm just working that lard into the flour. And then once you get it to a good spot, it's going to kind of look coarse. Instead of fluffy and white, it's going to look a little coarse. And that means that you've got your lard worked in there good. I'm just going to make a little well in the middle. Now, you never know from time to time how much water it's going to take. You want to use cold water. And I'm going to start out with a couple of tablespoons. And I'm just going to work it into that flour. And honestly, I believe that that's going to be plenty of water. If I can get it all worked in there together and get it to come together, that means that I've got plenty of liquid in there. And if you feel like there's not enough, that there's just too much dry in there, because you for sure don't want to overwork your pie crust. I feel like it's not coming together very good, so I'm just going to add maybe a teaspoon. And that there's going to be, let's just call it 2.5 tablespoons of water. That's what we'll call it. Okay, I don't want to work with that anymore. So I've got my tea towel here, and y'all that's been with me for a long time and y'all have watched my older videos of making pies and pie crust, that I've always used a tea towel to roll my crust out on. Because that's just the way it was done at Grandma's house. We didn't have, she did have a biscuit table and she would roll biscuits out on it, but she always had a tea towel that she done her crust on. She didn't have anything fancy or nothing like that. You just want to make sure you got plenty of flour on your tea towel. Now this is going to make one 9-inch pie crust. And I will put the recipe down in the description box below my videos. Under the title of my videos will always be all of my information and my recipes. And I'll also include the recipe for a double crust too. Now I've got several videos making pie crust. And I even have an older video rendering lard. But that video was also about making fried pies. And I will look for that video and I'll link it below too. Pie crusts do not have to be perfect. You just want to make sure that they fit your pie pan. And sometimes they're going to crack and they're going to fall apart. But that's okay, because you can always patch it up and make it work. So never fret over pie crust that you think just, oh, that's just not pretty enough or it's not round enough. As long as it fits your pie pan, put your filling in it, you're good. I can tell you I've made lots of mistakes in my years of cooking, and some of my biggest mistakes was the best tasting dish that come out. So sometimes being perfect is not always the best. Now, this video is not about me making some kind of pie, it's just about the pie crust. So, and I know that this is plenty big enough for my pie pan, because my pie pan's not real big that I'm using. So what I like to do is fold it over, get some of that flour off, and fold it over one more time. Or you can roll it over your rolling pin and place it inside your pie pan. So I'm going to be baking, blind baking, just a empty pie shell, so I can show y'all how it turns out using fresh lard. So here it is, our beautiful pie crust made out of fresh rendered lard. You can just look at and tell how flaky it is and how good it's going to be. I guess I'm gonna have to make Mr. Brown pie now. I'll probably just whip up maybe a little bit of coconut custard to put in it, because that's one of his favorites. So there you are. Fresh rendered lard is excellent for biscuits and just any kind of sauteing or deep frying, anything you got to do. So if you've been worried about fresh lard, don't worry. It is not bad for you. In fact, it's a lot better for you than most things that you buy at the store. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope maybe you learned something a little more about lard, and that it's good for you and how easy it is to render it. And a few ways how you can find you some good fresh fat to render is to go to your local processor or butcher or whatever and ask for some. Because like I said, if the people that are getting their hogs butchered, if they don't want that fat, a lot of times they just throw it away. I'll be trying to find the links to the different places that were mentioned in that one. I got that off a blog. I forget the name of it. But anyways, I'll try to get them links to where you might can find you some good pasture-raised lard. Like I said, if you don't see it down in my information box, it's because I wasn't able to find it. But if I don't, just do your research for it, because I know a lot of y'all are wanting y'all just really wanting some really good lard. I wish I could help all of you in that. But I'll be finishing off a little bit at a time. Danny will bring me home 5-10 pounds to render up until I get it done. I seem to like doing it better when I don't do all of it at once. I can just do a little bit at a time. And I don't get overwhelmed with it, and I can get it put up. So what I'll do is put the lid on my jars, and I got a place in the bottom of my refrigerator, and that's where I've always kept all my jars of fresh lard. Some people keep them out in their pantry, and some people even can it, pressure can it, and put it in their pantry. I like mine put in the refrigerator. Now, if I had to, I would can it so I could keep it shelf stable. And usually, because we don't use the lard every day, because we don't like fry or bake every day, but used to I did. But once I get all this rendered up, it's going to last us a good year. So that'll be good until next time when maybe we got some more hogs to butcher. And I'm going to tell y'all, a lot of y'all watched us buy those. Some people call them coon-coons, some people call them cooney-coonies. You call them what you want to, but I'm just calling them that they are really, it's really good meat. That's some of the best pork chops I think that we've ever ate, and that's the truth. So we wanted to try that heritage breed of hog, because we always heard that the coon meat was just really high quality meat, and we love our pork, but we've always raised just, you know, the regular old hogs, and but this is really good meat, so I'm really proud of them. And so if you ever think you want to raise your own hogs, these are pasture hogs, coon-coons, cooney-coonies. They graze a lot, just like a cow, and that's the reason that too why we chose that breed too. So anywho, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed me watching or making a pie crust out of that good old lard. And we'll probably see y'all in a few days. Maybe Mr. Brown will come back on or something, see what we're doing, because we're always doing something. But y'all have a wonderful rest of the week. And I hope anybody that needs rain, I pray y'all get some rain. People that are going through all these bad storms and earthquakes and just every little thing that's going on, we pray for y'all and your safety. Just always know that you're always in our prayer. So, see y'all next time. We love y'all, and God bless.